Hello, everyone. My name is Max Kohn, and I am the festival director of the NYC Student Film Festival. Today, we're here doing a panel about producing your student films, and I wanted to welcome the panelists. Panelists, please introduce yourselves, who you are, what you do. Yeah. Oh, and where you went to school.
Oh, what's going Are we on? Frozen or is she frozen? Should we go?
I think Allison's frozen. Yeah, Allison, you're frozen.
Actually. Me? Oh, yeah. Okay. Hi, I'm Julia Guest. I just graduated from Ithaca College in May. I have degrees in screenwriting and theater with a concentration in directing, but I also produced two thesis films this semester alongside directing my own thesis and writing my own thesis, which is screening at the festival. So yeah, I do that. And then I worked as a production assistant for Summer of 69, which is on Hulu right now. I'm working on another feature film right now as a first team PA, and I've worked in the production office for both of those films. So seeing that side of film is something that I have experience in and enjoy doing as well.
And I am Jacqueline. I am from Brazil. I just graduated Ithaca College this past May with a television and digital media production major and a business minor. Last year, I was an intern at Paramount Pictures, and I was also in the Academy Gold Rising program. And I have worked as a producer in basically all the films that I work in school, but I try other departments as well because I would say that good producers work in other departments. And I love producing and I love being in this department just because I get to learn a lot. Every single film is different and you learn new skills and new things that happen, and I always get very excited about it.
That's us.
Okay, I can go next. I'm Allison. I started working in film I got my first job when I was 16 as a production assistant. I was originally working in late night, and I did a summer internship while I was in high school. And then I graduated during COVID, so during 2020. And I ended up going back to late night for a full year while I was in school in Los Angeles. And then I made the decision to move to New York and start doing kind of just more broad officey stuff. I was doing like set PA things. Like I was a set and office PA for Jimmy Kimmel Live in Los Angeles. And then I made the pivot to PR, and I worked that for a year and a half, doing music and talent PR. I thought I wanted to be not on set. And then when we started working more on our thesis films, I kind of realized I do really want to pursue actually being on set. And right now I'm working in talent booking. So I'm hybrid. I work from home primarily, and then I go to the tapings of the shows and the productions that I book. So I work primarily in podcasts, still late night, and then also different TV shows, daily talk shows, stuff like that. It's a great way to meet PR reps, meet agents, meet managers, and definitely like a different area of film where you're still on set, still working in the industry and networking, but you're not actually doing PA work as like an introduction job. So yeah, it's been really fun.
Amazing. All right, so um, I don't know where Jack went. When if Jack is able to rejoin, he'll give his introduction. But I just wanted to ask all the panelists, what student films have you? He's having trouble with the internet. How many student films have you produced? Um, and yeah, like what was that like? I know it's hard to count, right? The way.
Oh, I was
I
just
can
saying
jump
I'm.
in.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
go
I can
first.
jump in. So I've co-produced two, and then I fully produced my own thesis film. So that was something that was like a whole beast in itself. It was written, produced, directed, and then edited all by me. So that was its own entity. But I co-produced two short student films before moving to New York, one at LMU and then one at USC. One of them was a thesis film I was working on, and then that was the LMU. And then the USC one was just a student short film that was a sophomore there. But yeah, all three of them were very different and unique experiences. Um, Definitely my own being the hardest, just wearing so many hats. But yeah, I'm at three right now.
I'll go next. So I've produced a lot my beginning semesters just because then you're kind of producing your own. So at the same time, I think I like probably produced three, but I wouldn't call them really producing then just because I was doing everything and they were so short that I feel like I didn't really know what a producer was at that time. So I don't necessarily know if if I had gone back now, I probably would do a lot more than I did back then when I didn't know what it was. But then this past year, I produced a dance musical thesis, which was very interesting. So I produced that and we shot that in 3 days, three different locations, and we had six different choreographed dance numbers that also occurred during the film. So producing that was a huge learning experience. And that was directly after my film, Most Likely to, wrapped. So I went right from wrapping my film to producing that. And then I also associate produced more on the development producing side a film in Chicago, which is very dear to my heart. It's called Pucker Up, and one of my friends from DePaul made it, so I kind of helped her in the development side of producing. And then I also developed, produced, and co-produced a thesis this past spring while I was in LA. I was producing it virtually for my other friend who also worked on Most Likely To, and that was a short film, pretty standard, but yeah, learned a lot through all those experiences. Your turn, because you have way more.
I honestly do not know the exact number, but I have produced, well, since I got to school, it's been 3 years. Every year I do like 4 to 5 movies that I produce. They're like student short films, but I also I co-produce a Coca-Cola commercial, and I uh, also I was a line producer for a feature film on summer of 23, and all that while I was a student. So it was a lot of different experiences, but um, my past experience was three thesis films in one semester, including our film, which was also my thesis. So that was the first film of the semester. Actually, no, it was the second film of the semester because I did have produced another thesis film a weekend before our film, which again was not a great idea because I was very stressed and I was like for 14 hours on set and then jumping into a pre-production week for Most Likely To. So it was very like high demanding, but I kind of like that stress, which is very problematic, but it's good because I do a really good job when I'm under pressure and a lot of work. Um, and yeah, that semester I produced two other theses, and then I was like, you know what? I think I'm good for now on producing for like student films. And then the past semester, I was just basically just helping with some stuff for a few films, but I'm not gonna give myself a credit of producer because all I did was just support with a few things, and um, I AD on a student film, and that was my last film that I did in school. And now I'm working as a production coordinator on a feature film. So yeah, a lot of producing, a lot of producing. I don't know the number exact, but
All right. So,
yeah.
we've all just produced thesis films. What was what was the biggest obstacle you faced, and what was the big obstacle? Like, do you think that's like a general obstacle that like student films face, or like, yeah, like, did you face any problems that like it was unique to a student film? So Jack's back. Let's hope that his internet works. Um, when you were producing your films, were there any problems like that were specific to the fact that this was a student film? How did you overcome it? Did you overcome it, or no? Or did you just or like tell us all about that one big obstacle that you had to overcome?
Sure, we can jump in on that. I don't know if we just cut out or not, but we're back. So I think for me, the biggest challenge was schedules because every student on a set has a different schedule, and you can't really control everyone's schedule. And also, they're in school, so school comes first, and you want your production to be an important thing to them, but like at the same time, they have busy schedules for school. So that is very specific to student films, but I also think now working professionally, scheduling is always a thing with people. People have other projects that they're booked on. People want to fly out of this place to come to, this place to get a ride here. Like scheduling and trying to work around where everyone is and get them in the same place, in the same room at the same time is always going to be an issue that you have to kind of be very good at people skills and figuring out ways to kind of give a little while also holding some bonuses back potentially that you could use along the way to like motivate people. So for most likely to, I know that one of the things that I did was we were working at a production studio that I had a really strong connection with that's very local to where we live. And so one of the things that I like said to my crew was, if any of you want an internship here, let me know so that I can be a person that recommends you at the end of my project to have an internship at this production company or an internship that I had had in the past. So I was really like, and same with my actors, like if you're interested in casting here, like I've worked here as a production assistant, I know the contact for the people that I can connect you with that can get you on set locally. So that was kind of something I used as just like a way to boost morale on my set and make it like seem worth it, not just for the fact that you're going to get a credit in a film, but that it could potentially help you in your early stages of your career and what's next. Always, because I also like care a lot about my crew and want them to have a fun time, but at the same time, I understand that like we're all trying to make it, we're all trying to use each experience to help us in our future. So trying to make it like beneficial to them as much as it is to me because it's a huge benefit to have so many crew like putting their full effort into my film makes my film better, and if I can make their experience better, they're going to make my film better. So that was like one of the things was just working with people, learning how to work with people, and learning how to really have incentives that you kind of trickle along the way. Like don't offer everything all at once, like slowly offer it throughout so that people can stay motivated and have a positive attitude the whole time.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Sorry, I just want people to know who Jack is. Jack, could you just quickly introduce yourself, say what you've done and where you are in life and the world?
Yeah, 100%. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Uh, nice to meet everyone. My name is Jack Kukolic. Sorry for all the issues with joining today. I'm a producer, filmmaker from just outside Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And yeah, I met Max back at Nifty in Seattle, and at that point, I had already submitted my short documentary Tears Little Village to his festival. So it was cool meeting him, and yeah, happy to be here today. I've worked on a variety of projects, mostly producing on the student side, production management. I've produced one student feature film that's currently in post, so we just picture locked that one. So that's something that we been working on the last couple of years. And now I've just joined our Canadian Directors Guild for assistant direction. So I'm just joining there to go more the AD route in terms of my career in in bigger shows, still doing producing and production management stuff for indie films outside of that.
Okay, thanks. All right, Jacqueline.
Yeah.
Jacqueline, you were about to answer. Sorry, I cut you off.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that I agree with Julie that there's the specific thing about student films is school is your priority, so you have to be understanding, but at the same time like annoyed because you want to get your project done, and but you have to be flexible. So I think it's just a thing of uh coordinating exactly what are the expectations of the project way ahead of time, and also get them clear on what are their expectations and your expectations, and have that communication very much aligned in the beginning, so there's not as much. It's going to have conflict in between, of course. There's way less conflicts if you're stated right ahead of time. So I think for me that's what I strongly learned with specifically student films.
Yeah. So Jack and Allison, Allison knows, but the question is, what is like the biggest obstacle that you have faced, and like, is that an obstacle unique to student films, and how did you overcome it if you did?
So that was for me, right, Max? Did you say my name or?
You and Allison.
Yeah. So I think one of the main ones that I think we can all relate to is budget, right? Your budget constraints. I mean, that goes for any show, even bigger tier shows. But of course, with student films, the budgets tend to be a little bit lower. So you're stretching every dollar. So I think the biggest thing that I've learned over the years is how to do things as efficiently as possible, to use the amount of money you have the best that you can. But I think another thing that kind of comes down to budget is oftentimes your crew are going to be volunteering, donating their time to the project. So you're definitely going to get some stars in there in terms of crew, but you're also going to get crew that are learning as well, and that might not have so much experience on set, might not have much experience in the role that they're in. So a big thing that I found is often, you're trying to work at like a commercial pace to get what you want and what you need to make the film happen. But you're trying to do that with a crew that isn't used to working at that pace. So I think that's something that you kind of run into a little bit, and it's just trying to balance your teams out. Try to find those heads that are a little bit stronger, that are still willing to work on the film, that can bring on people that might not be as experienced, but that they know are capable of doing the job, and just might take a little bit longer than what you might expect from a professional working in that role.
I would say for me, probably my biggest things were um, not being in a field where I was like used to working. I was so used to how LA ran and working on projects there, that being in New York was a completely different thing. And I think doing student films in New York was drastically different. Um, Going from, I think it's very unique and not very common to start on like, a network show and then backpedal to student films. So I think rewiring my brain to kind of understand the way of doing things is different. Your budget is different. Your access to people is different. Like previously stated, people a lot of times are donating their time, but also even when you are paying them, everyone's working on the same projects and the same stuff at once. So I think being courteous of people's times, and then also a really big thing was like organization. I think I'm super type A, and that was something that came really naturally to me, and it still kind of ate me alive. I could not imagine if I didn't normally have everything in order. And I think in school, it's primarily hard because you're also a lot of times being graded on things. So it's not one of those things where you work for yourself or what works for you or internally. Like if storyboards are something that you like to do later down the line, or like, you have deadlines that aren't set on your creative process and they're set on an actual school timeline. So there were a lot of things on the creative aspect, but then also in pre-production that were more logistical that you just had to do things on an accelerated timeline or not your own timeline because of other commitments, especially if you're working on more than one film, you need to time manage really well. And you need to be able to have separation between projects and understand that everyone's like a young creative and nobody really has it 100% figured out yet. And like your word is not the gospel was like a big thing because I'm such a control freak. I had to kind of relinquish certain things to just even like teachers, if teachers have an opinion, you have to stay strong to your own like creative vision. But it was definitely a big thing of you are creating under their wings still and to like utilize them while you're still kind of like in a position to be able to was really important and to not like let egos take over. And I think it ended up making the project stronger in the end to actually have like so many people so far into their career be a part of the student film.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Very well said. I think I wanted to ask, a lot of us, I know, Jackie and Julia, Jack and Emmy, you guys are producing, maybe Allison, you have a producing partner. What are you looking for in a producing partner? How did you find your producing partner? Um, what's something you don't want? Have you been through previous producing partners? Uh, like what are you looking for in that professional relationship? Um, and has there been instances where you've had to like let go of a co-producer because um or just move on from a producer because there was some problem. And Alison, I want you to answer first because I know you have to leave like right now.
Yeah, I mean, on my student film, I worked alone pretty much. Normally, the people I produce with are in Los Angeles, so it just didn't, originally we were going to do kind of a remote situation. Um, but it's primarily who I produce with is my cousin Anthony. He works a lot on feature films. He works primarily with Sony, Warner Bros. And then he also did a few projects. Right now, he's working on a few projects with Universal and NBC. So he brings kind of a um, West Coast energy to things, which is, I think, kind of but he's actually from New York. So we balance each other out really well. I think having a strong connection with the person, but also being able to put boundaries up is so important. I also worked very closely, who he ended up being basically a producer on my thesis film, was my DP. Um, Throughout our process of working together and just meeting and talking about cinematography, we ended up really diving into a lot of the pre-pro stuff. And he just was such a great catalyst for connections in New York that he helped a lot. So I think like meeting people where they're at, finding who knows what, and then utilizing them in a tasteful way for what people are good at. Some people are better at pre-pro, some people are better at budget, some people are better with like actually day of set like stuff. So I think finding partners that you can trust is really important, that you get along with is really important. And then also people that you can say you're wrong to and not worry about burning a bridge. I think it needs to be somebody that you're really okay with being hard on and are okay with them being hard on you because co-producing can like crash and burn so easily. So I think that was really important for me. But yeah, I do have to run here. It has been a pleasure. I hope to meet you all in person at some point and potentially work with anyone here. Max can give out my contact information. If you guys have any questions or ever want to talk, I'm New York based. So yeah, but thank you.
Bye, Allison. Thanks so much. All right. Either of you?
Sure, yeah. So, yeah, Emmy has been someone that I've worked with a lot. In the last 3 years, we met in film school. So we met in the first year, first assignment. And I think we really kicked it off when we started working on that student feature, which she co-wrote and co-directed. So Emmy's always been more on the creative side. I've taken more of the producing logistical side. Um, on student films, I find it's hard to bring in a lot of parties in terms of the producing side, just because the amount of work that you have to do, unless there's a particularly large cast or something like that, I always found that when you try to split up that workload, at least on the student films that I've worked on, you just kind of end up stepping on each other a lot. There's just a lot of formalities that come with producing a bigger show once you get into like, distribution and all that stuff, where having multiple producers, I think, really comes into play. But I think more on the student film side, I've often found that it's easier to kind of just take it more as a one-man band on that logistical side myself, and then lean on others like your AD and that kind of thing to sort out, the scheduling and that sort of thing. But that's something that I'm looking to in the future, because you're absolutely right. You know, with that, with co-producers comes potential clashing, potential differential in ideas, and of what direction you should go in or how a decision should be made. So it's definitely something that you want to consider when you're going to go into a partnership with someone. How well do you know them, and are they going to bring everything that you want to the table, and are you going to be able to provide what they want to see at the table?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And for me, co-producing is all about over communicating. It's not even like while communicating. It's just for me, the more people share with you everything and make sure that you are aware of everything that is happening, vice versa. If you're very good in communicating, it would be a good partnership. Otherwise, there's a lot of things going on. They're all uh that all things are very important and needs to be done really quickly. So sometimes it's really hard to like keep up as two brains instead of just one. So it definitely helps that you can like communicate a lot to make that work in a way.
Yeah, I agree with everything everyone has said. And also I will say, like, as a director too, like looking for a producer when I met Jackie, it was really like being clear about how you work, because you want to have someone that understands what is best for you too and what is best for them. Because I felt like a lot of times with directing, one of my my like struggles is I'll think about things randomly at night and I'll be like, oh, we have to do this and this and this, and I would text Jackie and be like, you don't have to respond now, but just so like you know that I'm thinking of this. And one of the great things about like having Jackie as a producer was like she was very proactive, so a lot of the things she was thinking about, or I was thinking about, she was already like doing. And so I think it was like finding a producer who had kind of similar work style as me, but also like they balanced out really well, because I was very like, oh, I have all these thoughts, and she was very like, okay, I'm gonna turn that into a checklist that we're gonna do later. So like, I think understanding your communication skills, like yourself as well, is important as finding someone else that balances it. Because if you don't know how you work under stress or with a lot of things going on, you're not going to find someone that like balances that out or collaborates with you well. I think another thing about co-producing is one of the struggles I've had is some things have to be done like very early in pre-production. And one of the times I was co-producing, I put trust in something being done, and then it wasn't done by the co-producer, and it ended up being like that immediately started conflict, because I then had to do it like last minute and get in trouble because it was like documentation that we needed in order to film on school property. So like some things, like I would say my suggestion is just making sure you know what things need to be priority first, and making sure that if you are splitting the work with someone else, that you are doing it based on the timeline that it's done. Because some things have to be like for our school, in order to film somewhere, we had to have it confirmed by the dean and confirmed by an advisor who was working with us as a professor. We could still probably film, but like if we wanted to use a location and make sure that like public safety knew we were filming there and we were taking equipment and had insurance on the equipment there had to be forms filled out saying, hey, we're taking, because for our film, we shot an hour and a half away from school. So we took all their equipment an hour and a half away, filled vans full of people, and took them an hour and a half away. So we had to get that paperwork done way in advance because we needed it not only from the production studio that is a working active production studio with a contract with Hulu. Therefore, we had to get the contracts way in advance with them as well because they're very busy and they have other big films filming in their production studio who also need contracts done. So, like, making sure you know your timeline and you're sticking with it because that pre production stuff can really set off the rest of your production if it's not done on time. So, if you're co producing and you split up work, just make sure that you're checking in with each other that, hey, like 2 days until this form's due, or 2 days till we need a location agreement, and etc., so that you're actually getting them done in advance. Because if they're going to take time, it may not even be that it's going to take you a long time to do that form, but it may take that location a long time because they're an active business, or that professor a long time because they're a professor and they're teaching other classes. So, like, it's not just you. You need to give time for the other people involved, and make sure that you're sticking to that schedule.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, yeah. So this also ties in, everything ties into everything in student in producing, right? So this ties into like you were saying, like you wish you knew, like what's a big lesson you had to learn very quickly that you wish you knew when you were starting out? And like, do you have a story of how you learned that lesson? For me, that lesson was delegate as much as you can to people that you know. Well, first of all, delegate as much as you can. And then, make sure the people that you're delegating to don't need their hands held for whatever their task is. Because some people who you delegate tasks to, they're like, wait, but I don't know, like, like where do I do the thing? And then you just end up having to do it or micromanaging, even though you didn't want to micromanage in the first place. So that's me. That's the lesson I learned, and I have stories, but I want to hear from you guys. What's a story or what's a lesson that you wish you knew starting out?
I can go for just jumping in pretty quickly. I think for me, what I learned very early is you get everything in writing, everything. Even if you have a phone call with a person or if you talk to them in person, you always have to get things in some form of writing. And I did this for myself because I forget things pretty quickly, especially on production when you have so much going on. It's so essential to just take notes for yourself, but also to tell people what you talk about it. And that goes for you're making business with someone, or your a location, equipment, whatever it is, everything needs to be in writing. Because what I learned in the professional world as well, people will come after you for things that, like, oh, you have never told me that, when you specifically know you have told them that. So get things in writing on an email, even better, because that way you keeping everything formal. And in school, in student films, we normally don't do that because, like, yeah, we're all like friends, we all go to class together. Learn really early on that as soon as you start doing those kind of things, it's better for you to just keep going in the professional world. Because I learned that in the professional world, it's not fun as you may think. But I don't have a specific story because that happened so many times that now I just write everything so specifically, and I over communicate. And I don't even care because I know that that saved me so many times of like, yeah, I told you it's right here, the screenshot. There's no better feeling than knowing that you're not wrong.
And having the
Bouncing,
receipts.
yeah, yeah. Bouncing off of that, one thing that I struggled with early on that I learned very quickly. So, first of all, about Most Likely To was not necessarily my needed to be my thesis. I didn't need to film my thesis because I'm a screenwriting student. So, my thesis was just writing it as a feature version. So, there's like an 80-page version of Most Likely To that exists on my hard drive. That's my thesis. The film itself was a condensed version of that. And so I decided to make it for fun, which I think made things a lot better because I wasn't doing it for class.
But then it became my class.
Then it became her class because it made it so we could apply for grants.
And we could get equipment because otherwise the school's like, well, you don't have any classes you need. What do you didn't need for it? I was like, do not worry. Here's the class that I'm taking. So I add credits as a thesis and I could work on that because we already have been working on that for like months.
Yeah.
So I was like, I want this to count as credit. And then it became a class. So keep going.
So anyway, so one thing that I learned very early on was just being honest with your crew. And I was working with a lot of my friends, which is fun. But also, there were moments when I realized that some of my friends either didn't like their position or were struggling in their position. And I had to have really honest talks and make hard decisions of like letting people go from my production because I was worried about their mental well-being and just like their communication skills on set, which is extremely hard to do, especially when they're your friends and you want to work with them. But the way they're working with your crew just is not healthy for your crew environment either. So I think for me, one of the things I wish I had known was just like to have those conversations the minute it starts feeling like that might happen, because the longer you just let it go on, it's just going to get worse and more people are going to be affected by it rather than you just having a hard conversation once and saving yourself, from making the rest of your crew also experience somebody just having a hard time. And also, it'll feel better when once you have that conversation of like, listen, like, I'm only doing this because I recognize and I care about you. It's not even about the fact that like I don't believe you could do this job. I just think that like right now I care more about being your friend and like your well-being as a student than I do about putting you in this situation and making you work in an environment that you don't want to work in. And like there are other positions I can give you, like you could act in the film as a background or you could do something else that's a little less stressful because like being a department head it's a lot. And so I think one of the things I had wished I'd known is having those conversations and also recognizing those signs and addressing them because that's part of your job as a department head and as part of like a producing team and even directing team is like making those decisions for the betterment of your whole crew. And um, they're really hard to have, but they honestly make your production a lot better because I've worked on films where I didn't have that conversation and the film ended up being affected the entire way through the film. And then I just ended up not actually getting the footage that I needed because I was so worried about like affecting this one person on set rather than in Most Likely To, where, we had to let go some people or rearrange where they were working so they could have a less stressful time on set and we ended up getting things done and not, having someone be in a mental panic the whole time and also not affect our crew negatively for the rest of the set. So those are hard things and they continue to happen even in professional world. So something to definitely work on and just try to separate work from friendship. You're gonna become friends with people on set, but like at the end of the day too, like films are dangerous and you know being able to protect their safety mentally and physically is more important than their ego. So that's what I have to say about that.
Yeah, I think a big one that sticks in my head was when we were in pre-production for that student film that I mentioned earlier. Um, our director Emmy had reached out to an individual from a local film festival who she had previous connections with, who she just asked for advice from. Like, this is the project we're working on. We've raised this money. We have this budget. What would be your approach? And the answer we got from her was, "Don't do it. Don't make the film." Which was a crazy answer to get because we were so far into this pre-production phase. She was basically saying, instead, you should do a proof of concept with the money because that could potentially lead to more, and then the chance of the feature actually working out where you complete everything and finish the film is very low. So that was a point where we had very, very long discussions about what we were doing, because this person that is a professional and someone that we looked to for a mentorship essentially told us not to do it. And I think what we took away from that was that if you want to make it happen, you need to trust yourself to make that happen. Um, Doing it might not have been the right answer for everyone. Not doing the feature might have been the right answer for some people, but for us, we knew this is the time we have right now. We're going to make this film happen. I think this is the approach we're going to take, and that's what we landed on. And we ended up doing the film, and now we're in color and sound with it, starting to figure out what we're going to do for distribution. So, again, that's not to say that you shouldn't listen necessarily to people with more experience than you about what if you ask them for advice and that sort of thing. In another situation, that might have been the right answer to not do it, but it's about trusting yourself and trusting your team and knowing looking at what do we need to do and can we do it, and are we taking the right approach for us at this time with whatever show you're doing.
That is such an interesting point because it's like, you know, it's like who does the authority really come from when it comes to like any like creative stuff, producing advice, any kind of advice. I think students, especially face this problem where they want to get every kind of piece of advice they can. They want to absorb everything, but then, they're kind of getting advice from people that maybe, it can be hard to discern, especially when you are trusting yourself or when you're um or when you need that advice. I found it so hard. Allison mentioned we went to the same school, and for every single person who made a thesis, it was like, you know each thesis went through like at least like 5 rounds of drafts that weren't even that similar. And then like they were just changing so much. Oh, and then I'm talking to my friend, oh, now my thesis is about this. And I'm like, wait, you just changed that because of what the professor said? And I actually let me ask that. Like what were your professors like? Were they helpful for the producing process or the writing process for you guys or creative decisions? I know my school, like they were helpful. They provided a lot of insight. However, it's hard because you have multiple producers, you have multiple opinions to listen to. Um, you have and your classmates as well. So, sometimes we would have a thesis and then someone say, oh, the professor would say, oh, you can't do that. It's too expensive. You'll never be able to afford it. And then and then a student says, wait, actually, if you do it like this, this, and this, oh, if you change just this, and then, how do you navigate the advice of the professors and the advice of the students and all the advice and trusting yourself in the end?
Yeah, this one is a big one. Um, I kind of mentioned to you, Max, throughout this everything. Sorry. No, I know you're leaving now, so you're good.
I
You're good.
just want to turn on the AC in my room because I'm boiling hot in here.
To that. Um, so most likely to also went through a very similar situation, where, in the pre-production process, like I said, it wasn't for class yet when I was developing it and writing it. And when I had written it, it was 30 pages. So it was essentially like a pilot length worth of material to film. And I had done it as a proof of concept because I wanted to potentially sell it to the production studio that I was working for and interning at because their films fit the vibe of the film that I was creating. So I was like, oh, perfect. I'll have a proof of concept. I'll have a feature by the end because I'm writing it at the same time as this we're doing the project. And I'll be able to say, here you go, and package it. I will shoot it at their production studio. I will cast their cast so they can see it as if it was their film. So that was the idea behind doing this film too, was partially I was like, okay, simultaneously I'm selling this. And some professors were really supportive. It's hard because I went a very commercial route with this film because again, I wanted to sell it and I had the idea that if I can sell my first film as a writer, then I'm golden, regardless of if it's necessarily what I want to do forever. I don't want to write high school comedies forever, but I enjoyed writing this high school comedy and I knew that it would be an opportunity that I just could not turn down. So some professors were really supportive. Now, after we filmed the 30 pages of content, then my editor took our film into a class and had asked me if it would be okay if he showed the rough cut to his class for feedback. And he was doing his thesis in editing. So I was like, oh my God, of course. Like, if this helps you get feedback in your editing world, this was kind of his first time editing comedy with me. So we were experimenting with how that's done. And like, I was like, if you can get more advice, amazing, like do it. And mind you, the rough cut was rough because it was just laying out the tracks.
For 30 pages.
For 30 pages, which meant it was like 45 minutes long because it wasn't fully cut. It got demolished in the class. Everyone hated it. The professor hated it. The class hated it. They hated the main character. They hated the side character. They hated the jokes. They hated everything about it. Like there was a document from our editor of just everyone
3 pages of document.
Everyone going around the room just like, I hate the main character. I hate this. Get rid of this character. This sucks. Like genuinely, I was like, what is left? What is left of the film?
Title.
The title. So it was really hard. And that was, I hadn't even had a meeting with my editor yet. This was just a rough cut. So like now as a director, I'm navigating, trying to support my editor to feel motivated to still edit this film because it's been demolished by his peers and his professor.
In front, like he said, in front of the classroom.
Everyone. They just went around and just destroyed it. And destroyed things that weren't even in his control. They were like writer and director notes, and I wasn't there to support him in taking those notes. Like he's just the editor getting all this feedback. One of them was like, get rid of this entire character. And so I emailed the professor and I was like, hey, like, let's have a meeting about this because I don't think it's fair that my editor received all these notes and like, I'm not even your student, mind you. I'm not even her student. So I have a meeting with her, and one of the things I'll say is just like, when you get feedback like that, remember who is giving it to you. What is their background? Is their background in comedy? Is their background commercial work? Is it indie work? Is it experimental work? Is it more documentary? They're going to have a very different outlook. They may not even just like watching the type of film you're making. And that is what they're basing their opinion on, is just the fact that like, it's not a movie they would watch. Cool. There are people who would watch this film that are not her. So I had to kind of separate, okay, she is coming from this perspective of this type of film. My film is very different. My film is trying to sell to a specific audience, and I know that, and I'm staying strong and firm in that. Also, we've already shot all this film. So in terms of going back and redoing all of it, that's not possible. So I met with her. We took all the critique. We took it. We wrote it all down. It was very different than the critique she gave in class. That's another thing to keep in mind is if a person's giving you a critique in front of you or behind you, because they're going to say very different things. And you have to, again, be like, okay, are they just saying this because I'm not their student and the style of film they don't like, so they're just going on a rant to their film class about commercial work, taking over indie films? Like, is that what this is about, or is it actually about the film? we ended up cutting one of our characters. An entire character storyline from the film is no longer in the film, which was very hard to do. But had to I had to take her notes, and some of them I I separated out which ones were just biases and which ones were like, okay, this actually kind of makes sense. I can see that the story's dragging here. I can see that, the jokes aren't really landing the way I had envisioned directing them. The actor's not saying them right, or, I could have written this better. So I was willing to let go of my ego too and not just say, this is the best film ever, and I'm not going to listen to anyone, even if she's dragging the film in front of everyone. We cut out an entire character. My editor and I had to restructure all the edits. There are scenes that were in the end that were in the beginning of the film. So it's a touch and go because part of me wants to be like, I wish I had stuck with my original idea and just made it that. But then part of me is like, I think the pacing of this new cut is a lot quicker and we didn't necessarily need that other plot line, so I kind of agree. And then a part of me is like, but I still really like that other plot line, and a lot of people liked that other plot line. So just
It's hard to make
it's
everyone
hard to
happy.
make everyone happy, and it's also hard to know exactly what the right decision is. I could still go back and edit her back into the film. That was a big thing for me, was like at the end of the day, I shot it. I could put it back in if I wanted to necessarily. Um, so it's really hard to balance, but also remember your professors have opinions on what films are watching. If they are only watching documentaries and they are only making indie films, yeah, they're not gonna like the raunchy high school comedy that I'm making. So really separating those together and knowing that there is an audience. Like when we got into this film festival, I was like, there is an audience for your film. If you like your film, someone else is also going to like your film. There are other people that are similar to what you want to watch. So just make the film that you want to watch. If you don't want to watch the film, there's a problem. If you want to watch your film, that's all that matters. Yep. You are the audience. So,
Yeah.
long story short, that's it.
I think no, it's a great point. I think it's a great point to say, to acknowledge some people's biases. And I think, like I think back to something I realized, our the head of our program is a documentary filmmaker, and I think she has some really interesting things to say about documentaries. And it was supposed to be split this year. The fiction students were supposed to get a fiction professor, and the documentary students were supposed to get a documentary professor. But because our school made a rule that you can't have less than 15 kids in a class, that means, and we only have like 20, yeah, we have I think we have like 17 people in the program, in the film program at City College. It was in our year. I mean, we had to have it all together, and we just got all the advice from this professor. And it's like, oh, it's like, it's like you just start thinking. It's also like, even about documentaries, like she always said she hated, you know, um, like she didn't say she hated it, but like, for every time someone made a documentary about, or like that had a voiceover, or like an interview and a voiceover, and not that many scenes, she would be like, you need to have more scenes, you need to have more scenes, you need to have more scenes, you need to have a scene. And I was like, wait a second. I know many documentaries that do well, even if they have an interview. But that's most sports documentaries, and document like they have interviews and then they have a voiceover. The interview, goes into a voiceover, and it's successful in that way. And I mean, and it's hard to get scenes because it's like, you know, oh, it's like get the scene of the painter realizing he's gonna have, he got approved for a residency. Like, you can't be there for everything in a documentary. So it's always important to acknowledge whether they're a professor, or student, whatever, right? Someone's bias, right? Because everyone's gonna have a bias. That's just me. Jack.
I think the main thing, yeah, is you just kind of stick to your vision. You know, one thing in the directing perspective is through all the noise, you know, you've got this idea that you've written out and you've planned out, and then like you get on set and then there's a lot going on. And again, you're trying to work through that student film, you know, you're working through all the technical issues and all that, and you're still trying to get everything you want. And then you get to the editing suite, and then you're trying to really have your editor see the vision, you know, and there's a lot of moving pieces with that. Um, and so, you know, again, opinions are important. You know, you want to seek opinions, you want to try to diversify who you're getting those opinions from. Because if one person says this character makes no sense, but nobody else did, it's probably okay. But, you know, if 8 different people from different backgrounds are saying they're confused, maybe that's something that you want to look into a little bit more. So it's just about understanding who your audience is, who's giving you the feedback, and you know how you take that feedback in and apply it to your project.
And non-filmmakers, because they're the ones watching movies. You know, I get the main goal for all of us is to make movies for people to watch in a movie theater for general audiences.
Yeah,
Who is better than a
yeah.
general
With
audience?
our test screening that we did for our paper, we tried to fill the room with as many non-filmmakers as we could find,
Yeah.
because we were like, the filmmakers are gonna, you know, look too hard into like the filmmaking part of it since it was done. But regular people just saw it as a normal film and gave us good feedback with it. So
Amazing.
Yeah, can I bounce off that really quick?
Yeah.
So another thing, like throughout the process of making a film too, you can get critique without it needing to necessarily be like at the end, which is something that I realized through my directing training in theater is being a director, you are trying to connect with how the audience is going to perceive the film and if they're perceiving it the way you're intending. Um, and as the writer of the film, it was really hard to disconnect my writing knowledge from what the audience is actually going to take because I had read and rewritten the script so many times that like I knew it better than anyone, but at the same time I knew it better than anyone. So not everyone's going to have that like perception that I have of something that I've written. So for me, like with my actors, I always started every meeting with, so what did you take away from the script? Because they're reading it with fresh eyes. They are the closest I'm going to get to an audience. Same with Jackie. Like, what did you get from this script? Before I go and say, oh, well, my inspiration was this, and this is the theme that I'm going for, and this is the vision that I have. Because sure, I have that vision, but like, is the audience going to get that vision? Someone who's just reading the script or just watching the film. You know, I don't want to go in and tell them what I want them to think. I want to be the person that translates what I'm thinking through the film, and you should be able to get it without me having to explain it
And a lot of
to
people
you.
and a lot of people are like, oh, this film looks a lot like sex education. I'm like, that's not the first time we heard that. So it meant that there was something, you know.
Yeah.
It's not like all in the air. It's like, oh, they are getting something because they're like, oh, this reminds me of this, which is what you want people to feel the comfort of what they're watching. It reminds them of the comfort of what they have already experienced.
So just keep in mind that like throughout the process, it's a opportunity to you've done the work as a writer and as a director in like pre-production. So like let the other people tell you the answers to the questions you have. I like being quiet as a director in the pre-production stage was so beneficial to just listening to what they're saying and adjusting based on what they're telling me because I don't know what, you know, I already know everything about the script. I don't know what the audience knows about it. So
Yeah, one of my favorite things when I'm directing is actors, especially, is when when I ask them like, what do you think about your character? And then like they say something that you would have never even imagined, and you're just like, what? Are you what? Like, yes, like I wrote this shit, like, like, and I didn't even see that. Yeah, it's a great feeling. All right, so what?
especially with comedy too, like they said something funnier than like a line that I didn't even. I'm
Oh
like, is this
yeah,
even funny?
yeah, yeah.
Like, and then they, wow, that's a line I didn't even think was that funny until you said it.
Yeah, yeah. So does anyone from the audience have any questions for the filmmakers? Any audience? That's any audience questions. If not, I will wrap this up. Audience questions, last chance. Okay.
I'm sorry.
There you go. There you go.
Hi guys, my name is Vanilla. You guys can call me Nella. I do have a question. So I'm like looking to go to film school this upcoming application cycle. And so all the shorts I've made so far have been super DIY, nothing serious, if that makes sense. And the one constant I've found in like the three shorts I've made is pre-production is always like horrible. And I just want to know if that's true, like if that's true going into film school and if that remains true in the professional world, and like if you guys have any tips to make pre-production smoother.
I actually love pre-production. Every time someone says like it's off, I'm like, what do you mean? You don't like to be like having a bunch of to-do lists and spreadsheets and a bunch of quotes. I just love that. And like 13 different emails to send in the next hour. It is, I think, how can I say this? If you feel that pre-production for you it's painful and you don't enjoy it, it means you need to find a producer that can take away that part that you don't enjoy it. And that's when co-producing comes into place. Pre-production for making a film at home by yourself or working on a student film or in the professional world, it's always going to be the same level of stress. The difference is when you're by yourself, you do everything. You're stressed because you have to be the creative brain and also the business brain. And in student films, you have to do to like everyone is trying to like get different experiences, and sometimes they don't are not into the same page as you. And in the professional world, you have people doing different things, so it's not as stressful as it is doing everything by yourself. Like in the professional world, I have someone that is doing all the travel arrangements for the actors. So I don't have to worry about actors on my producing. While in student film, I have to worry about actors because I don't have someone specific for actors. So like it depends. I think it's just like trying to find a balance. When I had to do things when it comes to the creative aspect, like directing or doing any of the other creative things, I was struggling a lot. I'm like, I cannot handle this because it was not the thing that I enjoyed doing it, which is also good that you're having those feelings because you are figuring out what you're actually want to do. At the end of the day, that's the whole purpose of doing different things is for you to experience, see how you feel it, and move on into what actually brings you joy. And so it would probably feel a little bit the same in film school, but a little bit less because you don't have to do everything by yourself. You can find people to work with you.
Yeah, and I also will say I agree because I've worked, directing side and I prefer directing side over producing, but I don't shy away from being a producer, and I've worked professionally in the production office. And working in a production office professionally is very different than working on a student set. Because last summer I worked as a production office on the movie for Hulu, and we had a huge team of people, like Jackie said, doing different tasks. So me as a PA, I was the one filing everything away, so it was all organized. So we could easily find it into a drive and keeping things very very easy to access. I When I started doing Most Likely To, I was like, okay, we need to have enough people for all the tasks that actually need to be done. And I think having like, you know, an understanding of pre-production is really important because the better you do pre-production, the better your set's going to run. Like the more we prepared, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? When it did on set, we were ready. So like I think the oh, pre-production is hell is mainly because you're trying to prepare for things you don't know yet. Like you don't know if that's going to happen yet. You don't know what could happen yet. So you kind of have to be proactive of like, if this happens, we have this. If this happens, we have this. So I think that's where like the like, oh, it's hell because you're trying to set up the set. You're also trying to prepare for if things go wrong. You're also trying to get everything together before getting on set. And then once you're on set, it's like boom, 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 because we did all the planning ahead of time. So I think like pre-production is like one of the most important parts of filmmaking. And I also think that it's stressful because it's the time where you work everything out. like getting a shot sheet worked out beforehand. You're not talking with your DP on set like, oh, what do we think for this shot? You already had that conversation a week ago. So you're on the same page. It's getting everyone on the same page before the train starts moving, essentially. And I think film school is good for kind of, trying out all the roles and really seeing how each thing plays out. And then working professionally, it's you are one thing doing one task, and everyone's doing their own tasks that work together. So don't shy away from pre-production, but know that there's other positions too. Like I definitely know that I don't know if I necessarily want to be in a production office when I'm done graduating, even though I am right now. So you take what you can get. Yeah.
Like you take more, people take classes and that kind of thing that will touch on those subjects. So I'd say that when I was starting out, pre-production was something that was very daunting. You were just trying to figure out what you're doing with something. But now that process has gotten a lot easier just with human experience, and meeting other people.
I think we heard some of that. All right, okay. So I think that's gonna be it for our producing panel. Can we get a big round of applause? Virtual round of applause. How do we do that? There we go. Yeah, virtual round of applause for our filmmakers right here. In case you guys don't, let me end the recording real quick.